Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It is my pleasure, great pleasure, to be moderating this session today with my dear friend, Dr. Amra Hadzimuhamedovic, who will be presenting her exceptional experience in her lecture of Heritage and Social Resilience from Bosnia to Gaza. Dr. Amra is an internationally known expert on preservation of cultural heritage, and particularly in the aspect of integrating reconstruction and post-trauma impact on communities after the war and the psychological potential of heritage in the recovery process. However, what distinguishes Dr. Amra from any of the professionals in our field is that she is one of the few who have actually lived through and survived a genocide, the terrible genocide of Bosnia in the 1990s. She's been through the tragedy of human loss and the agony of witnessing the destruction of her country's cities and heritage and nature and environment. Dr. Amra is not a stranger to Taawon, especially to the Old City of Jerusalem revitalization program, of which she has been associated since 2008. She has contributed in the capacity building and training project for the program, and during which she has assisted in training hundreds of professionals, of architects, engineers, contractors, craftspeople, and so on, all over Palestine, on the subject of preservation of architectural and cultural heritage, from Jerusalem to Nablus to Ramallah, Birzeit, even Nazareth, everywhere she's been with us, as a true daughter of Palestine. However, as we have been witnessing in the last 5 months, in despair and helplessness and gloom, the horrors of what has been happening and inflicted on our beloved Gaza and our beloved people of Gaza, Dr. Amra today will be trying to bring us a ray of hope that there will be something better after the war. Her favorite quote, which she always uses, and allow me to say it, Amra, is, "We will build it better." And I'm sure in what she will be showing us today that they built it better after the war in Bosnia, and hopefully we will be doing the same in Gaza. So without further ado, let me invite Dr. Amra to give us the first part of her presentation today, an overview and background of the terrible genocide of Bosnia. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Amra.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shadia. Thank you very much, Dr. Ruby, and thank you to all from Taawon for inviting me today. Since October, and even before, as you said, I have been linked with Palestine, but since October, not only my thoughts, but the thoughts of the whole family of mine, my friends, and the people that I respect and cherish are with the Palestinians. And all of us are trying to find out what can be done. Beside the support that is verbal support, giving our voice to spread the truth of what's going on, supporting our friends and offering hands wherever it is possible. So I think it's time to start planning recovery of Gaza and recovery of Palestine now. So we should join our hands in that process immediately in order to encourage people living in Gaza and Palestinians across the world to convey the message that we in the world, this part of the world that is bright and white and aware of what wrong is and what good is, we who believe that there is a power of doing good, we are planning that Palestinians that there is no possibility to destroy one group of people, especially when that group of people has such a pride, history, and cultural memory. It is impossible to destroy it, and this thread of continuity that is established in deep roots of cultural heritage and that give to the people a reason why they are linked to a certain land and to a certain history, why they maintain the thread of continuity, it in fact should be continued through the process of recovery that is starting now. So today I hope that with us are families, members of my family who have survived genocide in Bosnia, some of my friends who have survived it, some of my colleagues. And I would be so happy if they join to the discussion with their experiences and their messages. All of them who in fact were eager to participate in this and to listen to this, in fact, are extremely vocal concerning Palestine. And this lecture is not only about suffering, portraying suffering of people in Gaza, remembering suffering of people in Bosnia, that still goes on in a certain form. But it is also about our brothers and sisters in Sudan, Cham people in Cambodia, Myanmar people, the people that suffer in Syria, in Iraq, and across the world. So wherever actions against the people are going on, their cultural memory is affected. And I will focus my talk on some kind of comparative images. I will avoid figures because figures make it abstract what's going on, but some kind of comparative images between Gaza and Bosnia. My dear colleague Shadia, who in fact introduced me to Palestine 16 years ago and opened this gate of my second homeland to me, where I have been present through these contacts with young people, experts in the capacity building programs across Palestine, in some parts of Palestine, where my Palestinian colleagues, young students, and the others can only dream of being able to approach. And Shadia asked me to, in the first part of this presentation, to make some kind of a quick presentation of what happened in Bosnia and how it can be linked with what's going on in Gaza, So it will be some kind of a review. On a few days ago, in fact, on 29th of February 2024, we have witnessed and suffered this flower massacre that has entered into the history as a massacre of people who were starving and waiting for the humanitarian aid. What is extremely humiliating human people to stretch their hands into the search for the food. And while they were stretching their hungry hands for the food, they were killed. So it triggered, as everything what goes on in Gaza, it triggered our own trauma in Bosnia. And it reminded us on Sarajevo bread massacre that took place on 27th of May in 1992, when people waiting for the humanitarian aid, waiting for bread, were massacred in Sarajevo. So they were killed on the same cruel way as our Palestinian brothers and sisters were killed a few days ago. Almost immediately after this massacre, very famous Sarajevo cellist, Vedran Smailovic, started performing at the place of massacre, Albignoni's Adagio, conveying message that our pride and our humanity is in fact something that gives us the strength to survive and to be resilient and to be resistant in facing such kind of cruelty. And that place has become a heritage place in Bosnia. As so many places across Sarajevo, the part of the land or the place where the grenade hit the street and killed so many people was marked by this red resin, and we now call it Sarajevo red roses. All these red roses are in fact honoring victims of Sarajevo that in fact gave their lives for the fighting for good against bad, although it was, besieged city. So this place is one of the central places concerning cultural memory in Sarajevo. All of a sudden, through the destruction and human life losses, new forms of heritage were born that we have not been aware of them. So the other images from Gaza, here, one from November 2023, of the people in line for water are almost the same as those from Sarajevo, people in line for water. We were in a besieged city, deprived of the electricity, any means of communication. We did not have satellite phones, we did not have phone links, we did not have any kind of cellular phones, were not available at that time at all. Email, networks, anything. Only few brave journalists who entered Sarajevo were those who were spreading the news, what was going on here. So while waiting for the water, that was the basic need for the life, people were exposed to sniper and to shelling and killed. Today, these places of massacres of people waiting for water have become heritage places in Sarajevo that are marked on an annual basis, visited and marked with the plaques. So here you can see the map that Mirjana Ristic made for her paper, the map of the Sarajevo red roses and plaques that are marking the places of massacres that took place in Sarajevo and that are establishing some kind of the new geography of memory or the sacred mental geography of the not only Sarajevans, but people in the world. The other images. Juma prayer, recent Juma prayer in Gaza. Now, when the mosques are destroyed, the streets are becoming mosques. People gather. Faith is something that gives them the sense of being humans and make them resilient. This is the image from the site of Alaja Mosque in eastern Bosnia, in Foča, in a small town that had 17 mosques from 16th century, each of them leveled to the ground in a ritual way, and then the fragments of those mosques buried together with massacred people from the site. Those who survived continued coming to the empty site of the mosque and prayed there. Today, the mosque is reconstructed. This is Alaja Mosque, one of the most beautiful small mosques from 16th century. The people regained their right to be what they are, their right to existence, their right to identity, and their right to cultural memory. This is the site of the Eastern Orthodox Christian Cathedral in Mostar that was destroyed in 1992, converted into the rubble of stone that reminds very much on the churches and mosques in Gaza. And this is the first time when the community, not only of Orthodox believers, of Muslims, and those who in fact find in this act the right of attaching themselves to the good and to their homeland, gathered there and prayed together. This is how Orthodox Cathedral in Mostar looks like now, reconstructed. Then there are so many images of burials and these kind of rituals of praying for those who in fact were killed. These are from Gaza and these are from Srebrenica. Srebrenica is a place in eastern Bosnia where more than the like official figure is 8,700 and several tens of people, but in fact more than 10,000 people were killed in several days, massacred, and we are still looking for their bodies. Every year since 11 July 1995, there is a burial ceremony, burial ritual for those whose either fragments of bodies are found in mass graves or in very few cases whose whole bodies are found, because those who were killing the people, the aggressors, in fact, they, in order to hide the traces of their crime, in fact, replaced the fragments. They made secondary, tertiary mass graves. So some of the fragments of the bodies are found at 7 different places. And here today with us is at least one of the genocide survivors from Srebrenica, my friend Yasmin Yusufovic, who is one of my heroes. He was 6 years old. Then he escaped with his mother, who is still alive, alhamdulillah, and lost his father. He still feels the touch of the hand of his father, who was taken away from him to the death. The other person who was supposed to be here is my colleague, Dr. Mirha Efendic, who is cultural anthropologist working in National Museum of Bosnia, who survived genocide in Srebrenica and who has just published her personal story in a book. What I believe is that each personal story is a universal history or universal value in Srebrenica, in Gaza, and across the world where people suffer. So this is Memorial Center in Srebrenica. Children of Gaza, they find a way to live their childhood despite being starved, despite suffering, despite being turned into the orphans, despite the constant shooting at them. They find a way to play, to dance, to laugh, to be children. At the second photo, you can see again a broken car here with children that attracted very much them. Children from the street in front of my home. This little girl here is 8 years old, Khatija, my eldest child. I am mother of 4, 2 daughters and 2 sons. My Safet, her brother, was close to her. He's not at this photo, there is another one. They found few minutes to go out from the basement, from the shelter, where they were hiding for almost 4 years from grenades and shellings, and to see the sky, to pet the animal, a small dog, and to arrange these fragments of destroyed buildings into some order of sense. As you could see, they were somehow restoring the buildings that were destroyed in their childish way. They needed these fragments to be, in fact, put in some kind of a sense. So Khatija and Safet survived, thanks God, as well as their parents. Only recently, a week ago, I found out that she gave some interview for a War Childhood Museum in Sarajevo that was established. And she was testifying on situations in which she was thinking that my husband and I, we were going to our offices and job. He was a professor lecturing at the university. I was at that time serving as an acting minister for physical planning. And she was in so many times when shelling was going on, she thought that we were killed. And so she's ending this interview saying, I actually think I spent the whole war worrying that I would lose my parents. And it never stopped. She's now mother of two. She's a successful young woman, but she has, and that has probably stayed with me even after the war, even today. So the children who are now who will survive the genocide in Gaza will need a huge support. In fact, in 1993, the UN sent a group of experts, and the head of this group of experts was a wonderful Sheriff Bassouni, a person with Egyptian origin who was expert in the war crimes. And they, in fact, made a facts-finding mission in 1993, that means 1 year after the war, with a wonderful, huge report. It is for the first time in modern history that Sheriff Bassouni and his team, in fact, started using the word ethnic cleansing for what was going in Bosnia. And they, in fact, gave this definition of ethnic cleansing that you can see here at the screen, which is, in fact, rendering an area ethnically homogeneous by using forms of intimidation to remove persons from a given groups from that area. What is clearly in 1993, it was presented, in fact, in 1994, it was presented as a very voluminous report to the United Nations. He, in fact, described all of the methods and tools that the ethnic cleansing was being committed in Bosnia with the cases and figures that he gave. Murder, torture, arbitrary arrest and detention, extrajudicial executions, rape and sexual assaults, confinement of civilian population in ghetto areas, forcible removal, displacement, and deportation of civilians, deliberate military attacks or threats of attacks on civilians and civilian areas, and wanton destruction of property. And then he describes wanton destruction of private property, houses, public buildings, educational buildings, healthcare facilities, and the cultural institutions and cultural heritage sites. So all of that was documented and known in 1993. And yet, let's say not in the same way as this wonderful team from South Africa documented in front of ICC. But it was known to the world and those who had the power and teeth to do something. And yet nothing happened until 1995. The people continued being exposed to this genocide. As you could see, all what was described as ethnic cleansing is in fact charging the definition of genocide. So Sheriff Bassouni, in his report in 1994, and his team, they said that the death toll in Bosnia was around 200,000 persons. This figure is challenged later on, but as it has never been done as a complete sort of record, and we are still looking for the missing persons, probably it will stay as a subject of research even for the future. Between 1 and 1.3 million people were deported or forcibly resettled. And some figures, not from Sharif Bassouni, say that 12,000 to 20,000 women were raped. In the first report by Sharif Bassouni, this figure was 50,000 women. And it's interesting that only women are mentioned in these reports. Only since recently, we receive some witnessings and reports from the people who survived the concentration camps in which they were, in fact, detained, about the systematic raping of men, of male persons, when the father was forced to rape his son and vice versa, etc. And after that, he was forced to look at the killing, persecuting his own son before he himself was killed, etc., etc. So these people who were tortured here and raped, then they were killed. And these mass graves, in fact, were across Bosnia and Herzegovina. Here you can see the map of the mass grave. No, this is not the map of a mass graves. This is the map of the crimes that were committed in Bosnia and Herzegovina that were documented in some of the documents. So it goes on. Here you can see the map of the concentration camps where these red dots are showing, in fact, that at that place, in that municipality, there were more than 10 concentration camps. The yellow, more than 5, and then the blue are 1. So the whole country of Bosnia and Herzegovina was, in fact, dotted with these concentration camps, suffering camps. And this is, in fact, the map that was produced by the team working on excavation on mass graves across the Bosnia. More than 500 mass graves across the whole country have been found, and the process of excavation was going on. As I said, some of them primary, some secondary, some tertiary, and we still do not know how many mass graves in which the corpses of killed people were thrown in exist in this country. This is interactive map of the crimes committed in Bosnia and Herzegovina that is still in process. And then when you go into each of these dots, you know, the multiple data are being open concerning all these models of persecuting genocide or ethnic cleansing that Sharif Bassouni's team listed. While at the International Crime Tribunal for former Yugoslavia, during some of these processes against the main figures, there was the whole collection of the data prepared for the process for 7 municipalities where the genocide was committed. Then the tribunal decided that even those 7 municipalities, it was very restricted to make some kind of the illustration to show what was going in Bosnia. Tribunal decided that the process will be too long, that they do not have funds, capacities, and the time, that the criminals who committed the crimes will not live until the end of the process. And what was concluded is that they, in fact, processed only Srebrenica as the site where genocide took place, while the war crimes in other places were mentioned. So I will now go, as I said, the figures make everything abstract. The images are much more, and the personal stories are much more illustrative. Some of the figures that remind on what's going in Gaza, illustrating how Sarajevo lived during the longest siege in a modern history of the world. So this is Sarajevo. Dr. Shadia asked me not to talk only about Sarajevo, to show that the whole Bosnia was in fact exposed to these crimes. These are streets of Mostar. This is the Mostar Bridge during the war, while it was exposed to constant shelling, and the people in fact used this bridge as the only communication with the part of the city where there was a water. So these are mosques in Mostar. One of left-hand side, I don't know if you can see my cursor, is in fact assigned to Mimar Sinan as his architecture. All bridges, modern and historical bridges in Mostar, were destroyed in order to, this is one of the hotels in Mostar. So this is how Mostar, one of the panoramic photos of Mostar. So all across the Bosnia, and I'm so sorry that I cannot show all the cities like Bihać, Jajce, Goražde, Zvornik, Bijeljina, Brčko, Gornji Vakuf, Bosanska Krupa, Stolac, Trebinje, Mostar. So, 109 municipalities that were exposed to destruction. Different forms, either through the occupation, like in Gaza, entering them and destroying everything and killing everyone, or through the siege and these intentional targeting of civilians and their heritage. So statistics of destruction says that more than 3,000 enlisted heritage sites were destroyed. Out of that, I made statistics of 1,179 mosques, 382 Catholic churches, 106 Christian Orthodox churches, and 5 Jewish sites, which were damaged. Mosques were destroyed. Mosques were destroyed and their remains were removed from the sites where they were. And as in this case, as you can see here, if you see my cursor, where there is this pit, the fragments, that is Alaja Mosque, which was destroyed in a ritual way. The fragments were buried together with people who in fact attached themselves with these heritage places. So this is Žitomislići monastery from 16th century that was destroyed in the war. Here you can see how Mostar Bridge was in fact exposed to constant shelling in the center of Mostar until it fell down on November 9, 1993 at 10:37 a.m. So it stayed for a long time as some kind of a crippled, disabled city there. So as Adams says, all this destruction that was going on in Bosnia, in fact, was a violent effort to remake the world in another image. And all this destruction, in fact, was focused, channeled to destroy the people. This is a Banja Luka mosque, Ferhadia Mosque, one of 16 mosques that were destroyed from 1993 to 1990, mainly 1993, all of them were destroyed. So you can see it before destruction and after destruction. Here you can see fragments that were thrown at the garbage dumping site and how they were excavated and marked later on. So the particular focus of destruction was onto the houses, family houses. And it was really some kind of virulent masculinity that led these destructive efforts of those who knew that while destroying women and raping them, mothers, those who in fact kept the family life in a Bosnian traditional society, they were destroying society. And with destroying the homes, they were destroying the families and especially affecting women. However, the people in Bosnia developed the social resilience survival skills, and they were based into the solidarity, not solidarity of the world. It was lacking. We did not feel it. We felt very superior in a moral and ethical way towards the world, especially Western world at that time, because we were defending the principles of humanity in Bosnia. Solidarity was between the people. This sense of community, links between the people, was extremely important for the social resilience. Faith, religion, all of a sudden became extremely important for the resilience. Pride of being what we were, pride of being what the enemies, destroyers wanted to destroy in us, our identity, etc., was one of the elements that gave us this power to have the response and to be resilient. Culture and cultural memory and education. So what were the skills? The skills were very simple. One of the basic skills that we had to develop in besieged cities was to run as fast as we could, to run with our children, to run by ourselves, to run to our offices. Look at these women. Look at their shoes. They are perfectly dressed as in a best peacetime to go to their office, to work. Social resilience was going on, running fast to escape snipers. Then we developed war signalization. Here you can see, and at each corner, there was a sign, look out, sniper, be careful, sniper. So this signalization also was followed with some kind of war vernacular establishment of these barriers and the walls to hide us, to protect us from the snipers. And here you can see one of those that was somehow showing to the world outside that we are defending the civilization. Pink Floyd is mentioned here. So everything what was good, what belonged to the civilization, was in fact defended in Sarajevo at that time.
May I just interrupt, dear Amra, and
yes.
I'm just inquiring about the policy and the processes that has been put forward by the officials of how you start the reconstruction process. You know, after all this humongous, kind of unbelievable amount of damage, how did you start the reconstruction process? Did you have plans for every city? Did you give priority for the housing? How did you manage to do all this? And now, I mean, I understand it's not over yet, but I mean, after 20 years or so, you are way ahead. So how did the government, and you were part of the government as well, how did you plan to do the effective reconstruction and repair in spite of all the
So the recovery started in Bello during the war. As I said, while surviving and inventing the ways how to survive, we in fact were planning resilience. And I will focus here on culture-based resilience. This is the Bosnian National Library that was a city hall that was destroyed, and more than 3 million books and rare manuscripts were burned in that library. So it became some kind of a stage of cultural events there. The meaning of the heritage site has been increased through its fragments and through the ruin of this site. In 1993, there was an European incentive to declare Sarajevo cultural capital of Europe. And this was supported by some of the mayors, or European mayors and colleagues, and Pascal Bruckner wrote in Le Monde that it is not only to draw attention to a disaster, but to a miracle, namely that in Sarajevo, despite the war, a cultural and academic life continues, that plays, films, concerts, and performances are still held there. So this kind of living life of a pride, while being exposed to what is the most unbelievable at that time. Now we know that it is not unbelievable, that is something that is being repeated and repeated condition. In fact, we consider that it is important to stay human. The lives are lost, families are becoming homeless, children are starving and being crippled. Why should we care for monuments? That is the question that UNESCO asks in one of the documents. And that is really the question to be asked in each of these situations. Why should we talk about the heritage? So I'm here showing one of the towns, Stolac, where you can see everything was leveled to the ground. It is a small historic town. Almost the whole town center was a cultural heritage site. So somehow it was recognized, and of course, I'm quoting here the sentence of Mr. John Hawking, who was International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia persecutor. He said, where there is a cultural destruction, there may be a genocide. Recently, in fact, 2 years ago, the Office of the International Crime, ICC persecutors, Office of ICC Persecutor, issued a document on crimes against heritage, stating that destruction of cultural heritage inflicts mental harm to those who attach themselves to those heritage sites. And this kind of a relationship has been recognized in an elegy for Mostar Bridge that was written by Croatian author Slavenka Drakulic, who did not want to align herself with the criminals who destroyed the bridge. She said the bridge, in all its beauty and grace, was built to outlive us. It was an attempt to grasp eternity. It transcended our individual destiny. So what we, in fact, decided concerning cultural heritage is that it is important to make this centrality shift in the process of reconstruction from object to people, to, in fact, recover people through the object reconstruction. And Bosnia and Herzegovina, in fact, while negotiating for the peace accord, was successful in introducing cultural heritage reconstruction as a part of the 11 paramount factors for the peace establishment. Annex 8 is Annex on Commission for the National Monuments. So the recovery of cultural heritage was recognized as something that matters for the justice achieving and for the comprehensive recovery of societies. So I started working in this commission, and we established a set of measures and priorities, how, in fact, to make decisions on reconstruction and recovery some kind of public process, not to allow heritage to atrophy without being linked with the people, and to develop the whole plan of the capacity building and establishing ownership towards the heritage by each person in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So it was pretty complex work where we looked for the support of UNESCO, ICROM, international organizations, but the crucial was the work of the local communities, work with the religious communities. In Bosnia, you can see here at the site of destroyed Orthodox Church, and participatory recovery. So we, in fact, use this participatory recovery where people, in fact, were building back their destroyed central sites of heritage, which they recognize as the most important for the recovery of the places that they lost, of their towns, of their cities, they in fact participated in this recovery, and it was some kind of trauma healing process. So the heritage entered the priority list. And it was based in a research and interview that I did with the people who wanted to go back to their places. And they expressed their need to have the most visible signs of their belonging to a place and the most visible signs of their right to be what they are restored first, before healthcare facilities, before schools, before water supply system, before their homes even. So this, I published this survey, and it was some kind of, and they wanted it the same, at the same place where the sites were, where the places were, and in same form as they were. And here you can see how people, in fact, are reestablishing the sense of community through restoration of heritage sites. All of them are, so none of them is expert here. Only group of, so we restored these sites. This is the mosque that they were restoring. It's now restored, keeping also the traces of memory. This is the city that was leveled to the ground. It looked like a Gaza now. This is the city at the town center. It is much smaller. It is as a, you know, one part of Gaza. Historical. It is how it looks like now. These are some of the houses that were destroyed. This is the image of the town before its destruction. This is how it looks like, photoed from the peak of the Yarrow. So in the other places, like the one in Focha that I mentioned, we were looking for the fragments. There was nothing. Discussions were going on. And these very, let's say, high-level intellectual discussions on authenticity, on the authenticity of material and substance, etc., people did not care for them. They wanted their places to be restored as a part of coming to terms with the past abuses that they were exposed to. So we started looking for the fragments, collecting them, as somehow the people were collecting and gathering again the fragments of their lives. And these are Focha mosques. So students and young people needed capacity building as a part of sustainability of the whole process and as a part of the fast capacity building so that they can undertake taking care after the cities. So here you can see how the restoration process was going on and the building that was restored. And building by building, side by side, fragment by fragment, this was going on across Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was established as some kind of recovery of intangible heritage, and it somehow established the centers of the life, that then the whole process was followed with a reconstruction around. And this reconstruction, in fact, we made some kind of a manifesto for the reconstruction of the destroyed places and cities that, in fact, established the prioritization. What people want first is the sense of belonging to a place from which they were supposed to be uprooted from. Then these were the heritage sites of the strongest importance, something that was the most visible for them. Then they wanted, as a children who were listening to the stories from their parents and never witnessed what was going on, they wanted these townscapes, these cultural landscapes that were described and that were kept in their memories to be restored. So the reconstruction of the streets, houses, plans was going on gradually and slowly. What is extremely important is to be aware. So I'm now showing the images of the sites that were destroyed, that are reconstructed. The reconstruction was the ritual. This is how Sarajevo looks like now. It is a vivid city. where we still go on with some kind of recovery, but it is the city that is in full swing of its development. This is Počitel, the other totally destroyed site, Jajce. What is extremely important is to keep the memory on destruction and crimes that were going on. People wanted that the destiny, the suffering, the crimes that were so unbelievably present at the end of 20th century, that are so unbelievably possible in Gaza now, during our lives again, that they should not be forgotten. So this is inscribed in different kinds of the memorials. As a Sarajevo roses, as pieces of stone like this, never forget, it is now restored. We live a life that is in full swing. We hope for the future, but the memory on our suffering made us different persons. The same as, for example, I believe that now my two nieces who were expelled from the city where they were born are listening to this talk, and what linked them with Bosnia and what made them wanting to come back and establish their families and live here and contribute to its development is in fact this kind of taking care after their identity that was being tried to push, that they were trying to push into the oblivion. So the way of survival is in fact done through these stones that became much more than stones, their recovery, and also through recovery of intangible heritage and strengthening the identity and cultural memory. So the old bridge in Mostar, in fact, was, I'm focusing here on cultural heritage because usually it's somehow considered as something that is not important when people are hungry, when their houses are lost. Of course, the whole strategy established by Bosnian government was going on through different phases. Two in Belo during the war, that was first one, in fact, only this survival phase, invention of the tools of survival. The second one was taking care about the garbage, taking care about the infrastructure, alternative measures of providing energy, etc., water, etc., taking care after the graveyards, where the graveyards should be established because there was a huge need, healthcare facilities, and also property. Property issues was extremely important for starting recovery because people who lost their homes, in fact, had to claim their right to restore the homes. There was some transitory phase of providing shelters for them, but in order to restore their homes, to get the funds for the restoration, they had to prove that it was their property. And this kind of the establishing register, starting now for Gaza, is also extremely important. Making register of all the plans that existed before destruction in order to have some kind, because our plans in Bosnian cities, we had a very strong urban planning, were extremely helpful for planning priorities, for using the old strategies and adapting them for the post-war recovery in order to avoid threats. And I don't know if you want me now to, is it too long, just to list several threats that come.
I think we just gone over the limit, but please can you just give us these are important.
So in fact, there are numerous threats, and of course, all of them are context relative. They are not the same in different contexts. But what might be some kind of cross-cutting issues is that post-war reconstruction industry comes after the war stops. And this post-war reconstruction industry does not recognize the need of people. They, as any kind of industry, recognize the need for profit of those who are the drivers of this post-war reconstruction industry. It's very well developed across the world. We, for example, had in Bosnia, only in Sarajevo, 1,700 aid organizations working. It was impossible for Bosnian government to trace what they were working, where they were coming from, what the money that was dedicated for Bosnia was going, where it was going, from where, and what was the purpose of that money. So usually aid agencies and a lot of aid agencies that served in Bosnia were in service of diverse political or proselytistic agendas that were not taking care after the Bosnian identity, need of Bosnian people and victims at all. They, in fact, were using this money and these aid actions to do their own, some kind of the, let's say, ideological occupation of Bosnian people. Influx of aid funds is extremely difficult to be controlled. So it's extremely important to have some kind of the coordination unit, and the influx of funds does not go without that coordination unit. It is also extremely important not to have large-scale projects, because then you cannot follow money and you cannot follow all the bribes and corruption that goes with the big amounts of money. Small by small amounts of money and smaller scale projects are extremely, that are in fact owned by the local community. Of course, support of the experts from outside, support of the international organizations, and support of the world will be needed. But the ownership and the capacity building of all the projects should be Palestinians. Multiple channels of prioritization of the needs are extreme problem. So the coordination and the starting the sort of prioritization and adapting it through different phases of recovery that will go on for decades is in fact extremely important. Multiple channels of prioritizations have their own agendas and usually produce new international conflicts between the stakeholders inside the community, local community. Then once, when it is recognized as a site where the recovery goes on and where the peace is stable, there will be a pressure of the development and foreign investors that are trying to find the weak societies and weak context in which they can develop without the control, etc. And that is extremely dangerous, and that's not building back better. So illicit traffic of diverse kinds finds its place in post-trauma recovery. Memorialization issues are extremely important. People need to memorialize what happened, but if it is not also developed as a strategy, then it becomes a chaos and produces a conflict, in intra-national conflict. Social and individual trauma return issues and trauma healing are in fact extremely important. So it is important to develop strategies for property issues, for housing recovery, etc., and also for include the trauma healing in all these processes. Usually,
I will have, because there was a question in the middle of that. The question is from Rimatullah that, well, with all this is fine, but how can you deal with the trauma on a large scale trauma? How can people cope and go back to living after, you know, you have suffered for 3 years, and it's the same suffering, but I mean, for us, it was concentrated for 5 months, and hopefully it will stop soon, at some point at least. So how do you deal with the trauma? Did you have experts in healing? Did you have psychologists? How did you? I mean, I appreciate that you have to deal with individual trauma and property and feeling, if you like, a kind of stability or feeling more positive for the future. But as you said about your daughter at the beginning, she still have the trauma. So how do you cope? How do you bring up a whole generation of kids who are who have been deprived of their mothers and fathers, and who have been also badly injured and lost limbs and so on? Who can help to have a healthy society of a sort? It doesn't happen overnight, but who were the professionals or the social workers you have to rely on for taking care of the trauma people suffered?
You know, it is one of the most important questions, and I was hoping that Yasmin Yusufovich, who is survivor of the genocide, one of my heroes, survivor of genocide in Srebrenica, could have his opinion, give his opinion how it was done with the children who in fact were orphans and the survivors of such a kind of genocide, that they were facing the worst images that they could face, from, you know, witnessing to the killing of their closest family members, like parents, uncles, etc., to witnessing how, for example, one of his stories is that while they were trying to escape from Srebrenica, a mother was forced to kill her baby in order not to cry and to, send a sign to those criminal persecutors that they were hiding as a group of people. How he remembers the cold. His sweater was totally, the winters in Bosnia, extremely severe. His sweater was like iced. It was a solid. He was like wearing ice as a boy of 6, etc. So then he passed through some trauma healing. The trauma is never, I can say, it can be processed, but the traces of trauma are forming our individual persons. And each of us individually is trying to cope with the past abuses and with these memories of the genocide. Some people who were expelled and who witnessed it, for example, one abused the lady who, in fact, after being abused, was pushed into the house with almost 100 people, and they were burnt, and she escaped from the window, and she was a witness. She didn't ever want to come back to Bosnia. She didn't even want to use a Bosnian language. Some other cope with their trauma, longing for Bosnia and coming back to their home. Some of them have become, this is a personal. What we did as of course, there were teams of the psychologists, and I think what is important now for the Palestinian crisis group and all these wonderful organizations that work for Palestine is to start capacity building of the teams and teams of those who will work with individuals, and to develop the community, this social trauma healing. And this social trauma healing is extremely powerful through the heritage recovery. I, by intention, use the word recovery because it's not only about the physical reconstruction, but physical reconstruction is also very important. Recovery of intangible heritage, recovery of memory, memorialization, celebration of the heroic survival, but also of the lives of those who in fact lost their lives during the crimes. And also, as someone of our listeners asked, is it better to localize these like heritage issues and cultural memory, or to consider it Palestinian? It's Palestinian. It is as any identity is, every identity is a complex. It is a general, universal, local, etc. But the one that is, as Amin Maalouf says, that is most under the pressure, it becomes the most important to us. And these people are killed, persecuted, expelled, starved, etc., just because of being Palestinians. And it is extremely important to work on the recovery of Palestinian identity. Heritage has a power of social trauma healing, and let's say it's more social trauma processing. This kind of trauma are never closed. This is something that we wake up with, and this is something that we go to sleep with. But in order to be capable of coping with life, in order to be capable to develop, to go on in the future, we have to process it, to come to terms with it. And these are, I believe, in power of heritage. And of course, each individual person should have approach to some kind of care. That's why it's extremely important to focus and to develop the systems and strategies for these vulnerable groups, which are usually neglected because their voice is not so strong. These are orphans, elderly people, people who in fact were disabled during the war, homeless, widows. They should be, the strategies for them should be developed. And what is one of the extremely important actions to be done, and I am at your disposal as a lot of people, I don't know if Nina, one of my former students and a wonderful colleague who now works in Barcelona and who is so vocal, she lives Palestine every day on all her social networks and in her life, and she is a doctor of architecture. So many people are willing to support and to grant their capacities in order to quickly build up capacities of Palestinians to become owners of the recovery process, to become those who will lead this process. And I believe that there are a lot of doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, orthopedists from Bosnia and across the world who are also eager to participate in this process. Quick building, it's not university building, it's too slow for the need. Quick capacity building is needed. That's why we in Bosnia 19 years ago established a center that is called House of International Dialogue and Research, that now has become international center, and we gather people from across these places that are either exposed to social trauma or post-trauma places to build our capacities in integration or use or harnessing heritage for the trauma healing. They stay in Bosnia for 15 days, and I'm proud to say that we had 3 participants from Palestine. I don't know if Halima, Yara, and Wyatt are listening to this. They can also bear witness how this experience in Bosnia and hope is
Dr.
extremely
I mean, I think your experience, and thank you so much for this presentation. It's incredibly useful and eye-opener in every direction. I'm getting a number of questions we don't have so much time for, but would it be possible, and some of the questions, if you receive them, if you can put the answers in writing. And I think also on the heritage side, people always like they miss the landmarks in where they lived, even if the whole street has been demolished. If it's a minaret, or if it's a hammam, an old hammam, or it's an old souk, something that they're familiar with, they used to pass by. And some of the questions that were asked to children from Gaza, the most familiar one I heard many times is that I miss my school, I miss my street, I miss the places I play with my neighbors. I mean, these are the children who are not talking about their bed or about their roof or about the food. So it is a mixture of things when you destroy everything to the ground. And the kids in their memory, the good times were places that they relate to, that they remember, where they had fun, as the photo that you have shown us. And I think I'll be grateful if you can send us some of these thoughts that we can distribute and answer some of the questions. There is no time, of course. I mean, each question needs a lot of time from you to answer, but they are basic questions, because you have opened a Pandora box. All of us have been hiding within ourselves all sorts of worries, and not knowing where do you start when we start. And it's only with people like you and your colleagues and your community that has survived a much, much longer siege, and it seems like even crueler genocide, that you were able to get over it and above it, and insist on your humanity and on your right to live the way you want to live, and to hold on to your culture and your identity. And I think we are still haven't lost any of our audience. And
if I have a time, just one sentence that seems to be very important.
We'll build it better, you said. Yeah.
Dr. Zaki Aslan is here with us, and also Nasir Arafat, and I would like to greet them and thank you very much to being with us. And Dr. Zaki, in fact, reminded me on something that is extremely important, and that's the document that while he was the director of Center for ICROM Center, Sharjah Center of ICROM, together with the ICOMOS, he launched the work on the guidance on post-trauma reconstruction and recovery of heritage. And I was lucky to be invited by him to work in a team of 3 drafters. So this document exists at both ICROM and ICOMOS page, and it gives some kind of a structure and the strategy for the post-war recovery that can be the subject of the other lecture. Dr. Nasir Arafat, the dear friend of mine that you, Dr. Shadia, introduced me to, and extremely important person for Nablus, for its recovery after and keeping its cultural memory, was one of the reviewers of this document and contributors to the document. So it is something that goes on, and these people like Dr. Zaki and those who work in a teams that he was organizing, and also the lot of Palestinian capable friends, are in fact those that can lead this process, that can empower people in Palestine to do this trauma processing through heritage recovery. And I thank you very much. I can see that Halima is also here. Halima Ayad from Taawon, who is in fact one of those who could see how recovery in Bosnia gives some kind of indications that the things will be good, inshallah, for Palestinians. And
we will rely on you a lot when the time comes, I think, Amra. There will be also a lot of interaction, and I hope more meetings and discussions on the subject, because it's a very, very helpful and kind of rich experience that you try to cram it in like 60, 70 minutes. And we all have many, many questions, and we still look forward to hearing more from you, maybe on other occasions. And I think, I don't know if Ruby, I don't think we have time for Q&A now, right?
I mean, Dora, yes, I'm with you. I mean, we have just actually one question that if we can answer would be great before we leave.
Okay.
It's basically, what is the importance of including heritage restoration any peace agreements that will bring an end to Israel's genocide over Palestinians? And additionally, as genocide aims to erase a group of people, is it important for such documents to avoid localizing references to Gazan heritage and instead refer to the Palestinian heritage in Gaza? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I can just shortly answer. It is of crucial importance to integrate heritage in any peace accords, any peace settlement, and also not to localize it. As I mentioned, it is a Palestinian heritage that in fact has to be saved in general and integrated in these peace accords. And it is also extremely important to integrate cultural heritage destruction into the process in front of ICC in details, not only as a loss of material goods, but also as destruction that inflicted mental harm to Palestinians. It inflicted mental harm to me, not only to Palestinians, to the world, what was going on. So I think it is extremely important, and that's an excellent question. And I can see that the person who asked that question, in fact, has some kind of a clear vision what is important.
Thank you.
There is one question on sheltering people who lost their houses. So that is some kind of one of the basic, this trauma healing, individual trauma healing and sheltering people is extremely like a priority. It is something that goes on even during the conflict. And it has to be done through the strategic approach wherever cultural heritage site or the old forms of the buildings can be restored to provide shelter for people. It should be done. So it can be somehow merged into, but sheltering people is a priority before any other priority.
Well, maybe I will add something that it was a question Dr. Tafida wanted to ask you during the first meeting we had, and I think she's with us now. It's about education and schooling for children. I mean, for 3 years, you've had no formal education, or what did you do afterwards? Because now, I mean, the children are missing their schools in Gaza. Of course, they are bombed, or their schools became their shelter. So what will happen to the missing periods of education?
So the most important is that children survive, that they are kept safe. So the schools in Bosnia were working all the time. They were in Sarajevo, when Sarajevo was besieged, they were at the basements. However, we decided, for example, that our children should not go even to the basements to be exposed, because children were killed while being in school. They were exposed, the grenades were sent. So in my my husband and I, we lived in a condominium with more apartments, and there were some children who escaped from the borders, you know, from the mountains around Sarajevo, into our building, into some of the apartments. And we organized informal school for the children. And we tried to make it a fun. So we were like teaching them and making a fun in order that they keep this continuity. So there were some like, you know, some kind of young people who in fact did it. However, the whole recovery system should include this kind of a special strategy of education that should be developed. I can say that in Bosnia, we still are coping with that. And especially because the peace settlement included some kind of the three views onto the history. So the books are, the books are somehow cleansed of the
I mean, they already have a similar plan, our aggressors.
So yeah, that's some birds are not allowed. So the informal teaching, informal memory keeping, memorialization, etc., is in fact something that has to go in parallel with these formal schools. And as I said, for the capacity building, the education also should be done in a way that it bridges the gaps, that what is important is omitted, what is not important, etc. What is not important is omitted, what is important is in fact that they focus on. I don't know how children in Gaza do not go to school at all. No, of course not.
Of course not, no.
Yeah. So
I mean, their schools, whatever is left of their schools, especially the UNRWA schools, are shelters.
Yeah.
So hundreds of families moved and sheltered.
Yeah, they are in constant move. So that's probably, again, Yasmin and Nirha from this Eastern Bosnia, where they were pushed moving from he moved from a village close to Zvornik to Srebrenica, then from Srebrenica to Tuzla, etc. You know, they were pushed to be like forcibly to be moved while the male persons of the family were killed. And they can testify how it was for them. For example, Nirha, in her book, she was writing that once when she escaped to Tuzla, that she felt as someone who was alien to the community. They were looking at her with some kind of pity and sorrow. She was a refugee. She was not dressed because she got her clothes. She was not dressed the same as the others who lived in a, let's say, relative peace. And then she somehow had the responsibility to be extremely responsible student. So she became visible as a student who knows everything. The same happened to her in Zagreb when she was studying, and then in Germany when she was studying cultural anthropology and ethnology. She was the best in what she was working because she felt some kind of that it brings her a strength in
defiance
of defining herself and socializing and so on, and some kind of recovering her own self as a person, as a human being. So I'm you know what these children are in fact going through, and my children, of course, I don't know if Hatija and Safet are here, and Dervish and Demina, but they can testify that the war brought to them some knowledge that they couldn't get through the school. And also it influenced their heart and openness. And that's Nina, for example, who also survived Sarajevo siege, who is now in Barcelona, as I said, well-established architect and doctor of architecture, and Yasmin and all other. So they got some other kind of education and some kind of openness towards the other people and understanding of the destinies and human needs. And also my Adnana and Leila, who are my nieces, who are also listening, who were refugees from in Croatia, suffering, starving, being exposed to different kind of verbal mobbing, etc., because they were refugees from Bosnia, because they were Muslims in a, Christian society, etc. So it somehow made them stronger persons and more sympathetic towards the other better persons. So I cannot generalize, but I think that the personal suffering and trauma is a school per se, and it makes people stronger.
Well, you'll get more and more questions sent to you, Amra. I hope you'll have time to answer. I just can see the questions piling up. And I can only thank you again and again and again for this very, very, very valuable experience that you shared with us. And I know that you have much, much more, and we can still learn a lot from you and from all your contacts when the time comes. But it's also really gave us the ray of hope that you promised. It's like it will get better, and there is a way out. And we were not, we have been targeted 75 years as well, so some of these refugees have been refugees 75 years and continue to be kind of attacked and bombarded and what have you. But it means now, with the recognition, the more international recognition of the plight of the Palestinian people, it will be probably and hopefully time for recovery. And I can't thank you enough, and I would like to thank you on behalf of Taawon and all our friends who has joined us. And I hope we meet again, Amra, in Palestine, in a way,
Inshallah.
or inshallah. But also we can arrange for other meetings like this and focus on certain issues that you can elaborate on. I'm sorry we can't have more time, and you wouldn't have time to give us more, but you already gave us a way of kind of appreciating that we, instead of self-pity or feeling sorry about what has happened, that others has been through that and managed to survive. And as you know, Palestinians very well, we are survivors as well.
Yeah.
So inshallah things will get better, and we'll come back to you. And I hope, Ruby, we can send the questions to Dr. Amra.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Shadia. So definitely, and thank you, Dr. Amra, for this wonderful presentation and for your time today. So yes, I will send a follow-up email and to all participants, and any questions I will forward to Dr. Amra if she has a time to kindly answer them. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
And with you, we will build it better.
Inshallah.
Oh, yes, that's great. Building back better concerning heritage means establishing links between people and heritage.
Absolutely.
Empowering people through recovery of heritage. That is building back better.
We will build it back better, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah. And thank you very much, Dr. Shadia, Ruby, and the whole team of Taawon. First of all, for your such a strong commitment for the Palestinian case that I have witnessed through all these 16 years of being in touch with you, and also for letting me the part of these endeavors.
You are. You have no choice. You are a part.
Thank you so much.